بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وبعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم أما بعد. We're all students. Okay, what does it mean to be a student in England in the 21st century, especially a student of Sharia? Especially when we, being as part of society, already have an understanding of what education means and what education should give us. A concern that I often see with graduates or students who are finishing their graduation is about jobs. What do we do? Do we find a job? Won't we find a job? You know, there's certain things that we see in students altogether. And it's often at times that I'm left asking myself, why is it that we study? Why is it that we study Sharia? Why is it that we study the Ulumuddin? Okay, and inshallah in today's talk, I'll be discussing a few things about what it means to be a student of Sharia. A few things of what it means to be a student of knowledge. As that is the term that we use nowadays, right? A student of knowledge. See, I mean, you're all students now, and you know that the word ilm, which comes from the chapter alima ya'lamu, right? From sami'a yasma'u, gives a certain meaning. Okay? Who could tell me from the sister side what alima ya'lamu means? What does alima mean? Sister side, anyone? Alima, ya'lamu, ilman, to know, okay? Brothers, is that correct or incorrect? Say right? Alima ya'lamu ilman means to know. Okay? Some of the grammarians go on to say that al-ilmu bi-ma'na al-ma'loom. Ma'loomun. What does ma'loomun mean? Something that's known. Right? The plural of ma'loom will be ma'loomat. Information. Okay? Information. So, ilm in Arabic literally means information. Things that we learn, things that we know. But the Quranic conceptualization of ilm is somewhat different to the linguistical understanding of ilm. How so? When we look at the Quran describing the people of ilm, it talks about certain characteristics. For example, it says, إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. Allah over here is the object, isn't it? The subject is ulama. Meaning that the khashya, the fear of Allah, and we know what innama doesn't mean. What does innama do? Al-Hasr, yes. The verily only the ulama of his slaves are those who truly fear him. So, one of the characterizations of the ulama is that there are people that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's based on this that the ulama like Ghazali used to say that with every new piece of knowledge that you learn, you should increase in khashya. And if you don't, then something is going wrong. If you don't, then something is going wrong. Okay? We know from the Quranic description of the ulama of the past nations. We say, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ حُمِّلُوا التَّوْرَاةَ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَحْمِلُوهَا كَمَثَلِ الْحِمَارِ يَحْمِلُ أَسْفَارًا. It says what? That the example of whom? Yes, the example of those who had what? Held the covenant of the Torah and then neglected it. Is like those of who? Is like a donkey that has books laden on its back. So over here the Quran is saying that just the pursuit of acquiring knowledge, the pursuit of acquiring, of the acquisition of information is not enough to make you a scholar. You understand? Our teacher used to always say that if you have become the greatest scholar on earth, but if you don't have the khashya that the Quran talks about, then the entire dunya can give you as many certificates as it wants. You are not a scholar in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not a scholar in the eyes of the Quran. Okay? But today I want to talk about is the struggle that comes with studying. In light of some of the examples of the past, and in light of, inshallah, I plan on speaking about the contemporary period as well, just so that people don't feel that what the people of the past did doesn't happen today. Okay? The pursuit of knowledge, or talabul ilm as we call it, starts with the creation of Adam according to many scholars. In the story of the creation of Adam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Okay? And what? He taught Adam all of the names. Certain riwayat talk about after the creation of Adam, he is told to go to the angels and listen to them and learn from them. And some of the scholars say that the fact that Adam was told to go to them perhaps alludes to the idea that they were far, so he had to travel to them. But in any case, even if this in this ayah we can't find the particulars of the pursuit of knowledge, we find them in the example of Musa and Khidr. In the story of Musa and Khidr, and I'm sure you all know the story, where Musa ﷺ asks a non-prophet, a non-prophet, what does he ask him? هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. He asks him with humility. He asks him with full adab. And many of the scholars are astonished by this, that a prophet over here is asking what? A non-prophet. And he's asking him with all the adab, because this is the requirement of ilm. If you truly want to learn from someone, then what you have to do? You have to humble yourself and lower yourself. Imam al-Shafi'i used to say that anyone who tries learning scholarship with pride, with arrogance, with egotism, will never succeed. But he used to say anyone who learns بِذُلِّ النَّفْس, with humility, وَضِيقِ الْمَعِيشَةِ. No, ضيق means with discomfort, okay, with restrictions, with poverty and austerity, وَبِخِدْمَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ, and with the service, the servitude of the scholars, أَفْلَحَ. He will succeed. And there's so many stories that we can talk about this, and I'll give you a glimpse of this so you need to understand the gravity of this, of why we are here, and how all of you have to see yourself as part of a long tradition of learning knowledge. Okay? Learning knowledge from heart to heart, from generation to generation. In any case, what we see is what? Musa ﷺ, being a prophet, humbling himself to Khidr, asking him what? هل أتبعك. He's asking him permission, saying what? Can I follow you? هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. On this basis, on the basis that you teach me, تعلمني مما علمت رشدا, from the goodness that you have been taught. And we know the story, and throughout the story, anybody who reads the story and its language and appreciates it will realize how much adab Hazrat Musa ﷺ has to espouse. From amongst the Sahaba, we have many narrations from the Sahaba. Ibn Abbas being a key one. After the Prophet's death, Ibn Abbas is still a young child, and he says to one of his friends from the Ansar, we should gather the ilm. We should gather the ilm because there's many Sahaba around us. And his friend goes, what makes you think that people are going to come to you? What makes you think that? Anyway, Ibn Abbas, what would he do? Ibn Abbas says that I used to go to the houses of the Sahaba at the time of Dhuhr, when the sun is out at its peak, in the scorching heat of the desert, and I would find them making qaylula, so I would not knock on their door. Instead, I would lie down. I would lie down on the veranda, and he talks about how he would feel the hot air, the desert air, the dust, in his face, gushing into his face, but he wouldn't do anything. Until the Sahaba would come out and say to him, Ya ibn Ammi Rasulillah, oh nephew of the Prophet ﷺ, what are you doing here? He goes, I've come for this hadith, I've come for this knowledge. They said, you should have come and knocked on the door. Ibn Abbas himself is saying that I could have knocked on the door and they would have let me in and I would step with them. But that is not the way of ilm. That is not the way of learning. So instead he used to what? Sleep outside. And then obviously he became who he became, and his friend used to say, this person was a faqih. You know, he saw things from afar and he had insight. And look at us now, we're just here. You know, Jabir ibn Abdullah, one of the most prolific transmitters of the hadith of the five. They say there are five most prolific transmitters. Among them is Abu Huraira, Aisha, Ibn Umar, Jabir ibn Abdullah, and Abdullah ibn Abbas. All of these are very young. Jabir ibn Abdullah traveled a month. How much? A month to Egypt just to hear one hadith from a Sahabi called Abdullah ibn Unais. He said that I had heard that you had heard from the Prophet ﷺ, so he went all the way to Egypt, knocked on his door, and he asked who's outside. He goes, Jabir who Ibn Abdullah from the Ansar. He says yes. He came outside and he hugged him and he goes, what would you like? He goes, I just want to hear this one hadith and nothing else. And there are many narrations of this. From the people of Kufa, you have Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. After they would hear that one person from Medina has said this, they would travel to Medina. They go, we wouldn't sit still, we'd have to go to Medina and hear it from the person. There's a famous tabi'i, he's the student of Ibn Abbas, called Ata ibn Abi Ribah. He had many students, Ibn Abbas, and all of them are very notable. But Ata is an interesting character. Ata came from Yemen, and they say he had 7 defects in his body. How many? 7. And those of you who are studying Arabic, you know the sifa of af'al, right? So they say he was aswad, a'war, abtash, yeah, and a'raj, and I can't remember the other one, right? But aftash, I think he said. So they had 7 problems with him. What was the problems? They say he was black, he was one-eyed, okay? He was one-eyed, and then later he became blind, okay? He had a broken nose. He had nothing over here. Ashal was another one. He was paralyzed. And he used to limp because he had something wrong with his feet. They say that he made the mosque his bed for 20 years. For 20 years in Makkah he slept in the mosque. And he used to always stay quiet. But whenever he spoke, the Sahaba or the Tabi'in would say, we would assume that he's speaking as though he has divine guidance. Okay? As if that he is being inspired to speak in the way that he does. Okay, 20 years he slept on the mosque floor. Understand? So, the point I'm making is that the struggle of scholarship from that period, from the time of the Sahaba, all the way down till today, has been consistent. And I believe that this has to do something with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, يحمل هذا العلم من كل خلف عدول. Okay, what the Prophet ﷺ said is that this knowledge, which knowledge are we talking about, people? The knowledge of Sharia, the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ, the inheritance of the Anbiya, of which the Prophet ﷺ himself has said, he said that this inheritance, that the inheritance that the Prophets leave is what? It's not money and it's not wealth. Yeah, la yurithu dinaran wala dirhaman. Okay, it's the wisdom, it's the inheritance of which is the ilm itself. So this ilm comes at a price, and the price pretty much is poverty. The price is austerity, but it's done for a reason, and it's this hadith that I was talking about. That from every generation, it says what? يحمل هذا العلم من كل خلف عدوله or عدوله. That from every generation, you will have a generation, right? From every generation you will have a cadre of scholars, a constellation of scholars who are the best amongst them. And what is their duty? ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وانتهال المبطلين وتأويل الجاهلين. It's their duty to defend Islam from wrong interpretations, from misunderstandings, from the devious interpretations. So this constant idea of scholarship will carry on. And if you look in the Quran carefully, we see that وَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ طَائِفَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ, right? That from the believers, you will always find a group of scholars, a group of people, nafar, right? What do? They go and seek knowledge, and they come back to their communities, to their respective communities. And what do? They admonish them. Yeah? وَلِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا. Okay? Indhar obviously means what? To admonish them, to remind them of the word of God, of the covenant, and so forth. So, to the students of knowledge, the thing I want to share with you today is we need to understand the gravity of the ilm that we learn, and we need to understand our role in society. There's a scholar of the past century, known as Sheikh Zakaria Al-Kandahelwi. He traveled to Pakistan. It's a very stately visit, very royal one. He visited Darul Uloom Karachi to Mufti Shafi' Uthmani's madrasa. Mufti Shafi' had requested him to give a talk in the main hall. And you can imagine the main hall was really full. And the Sheikh said, look, I'm not well, I'm old, but I'm just going to give you one sentence. That's all he said. He only said one sentence and he left. And what was the sentence? He says that let every student realize his worth. Okay? Let every student realize his worth, his potential, and what it is that he's expected to do. What are his requirements? Because in the end, you have to ask yourself that why did the ulama put themselves through so much struggle? Okay? Why did the ulama put themselves through so much struggle? You know, there's so many examples. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, when he started studying in his early ages, they say that he had to sell the wood off his roof. No, a person's house, he used to have wood on his roof. He said he never had money, so he ended up chopping down some wood off his roof and selling it so that he could go and study. Okay? If you find this is too far, I will tell you of examples of my own scholars, of my own pursuit of scholarship when I have seen students like this. Okay? One of my own shuyukh, you know, he didn't have money to buy paper. He didn't have money to buy paper. So what would he do? He used to use newspaper or scraps. He used to use scraps. And you know, Imam Shafi'i said that we couldn't afford paper or things to write on. So I used to go to the dustbins and I used to look for good materials that I could scrape on. And then he says we used to have a really old jar at home. I used to put all the ahadith inside there. Okay, Imam Shafi'i was yatim. So he used to ask the teachers that, look, his mother used to ask, I have no money, can my student come in and sit? So they used to allow that. He used to do voluntary work and he used to carry on studying. Okay? So the idea of studying in this way is nothing new. Okay? It's nothing new. And Ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah, in his Muqaddimah, actually has a nice analysis. It's a very sociological analysis as to why it is the case that the ulama tend to live in poverty. So his understanding is that it's to do with supply and demand. What is it? It's to do with supply and demand. Generally, it's understood that if there's careers that serve the community, then the community sees its value. Okay? So the economy, so you know, capital and so forth, these things, these will always have what? People that do what? That support that. So you always find doctors. There's always a need for doctors, and doctors will be well paid. Okay? Things like that. What he says is that when it comes for scholarship, you'll find that society or generally doesn't see the need, okay, to create ulama. And if it does, it's only to the extent that it benefits them. So mosque imams. In our societies, you have maktabs, right? Quran classes, students for Quran classes. But surely, those of you who are studying knowledge for long enough will realize that there are 101 other sciences that need to be kept and preserved. You understand? Ibn Makula, many scholars used to say about their time that I know 17 sciences that the scholars of my time don't even know the names of. What do you say? I know 17 sciences that the ulama of my time don't even know the names of. You know, Farabi and others, they used to say these things, that I know 70 languages. They memorized 70 languages and used to speak them properly as well. You know? So, what we see is that these scholars then lived in a way that society couldn't directly feel its worth, and therefore they lived in the way that they did. Understand? We know the story of Imam al-Bukhari, for example, when his money had not come, he was left to eat from the grass. It says, "Kuntu akulu min al-ard thalatha ayyam." Okay, that for 3 days he was so poor that he had nothing to live off. There's a story of Imam Ahmad when he went to Yemen. Imam Ahmad went to Yemen. It was a hard trip because he didn't have enough money and he had to work for a while. When he went to Yemen, he said he was so hungry, he never had food for 3 days, that he made a mistake in his salah because of the hunger. The Razi brothers, the famous muhaddithin, they had bought a fish, okay, really nice fish they wanted to eat. They're going to grill it and things, right? And what happened is they were too busy studying in Egypt with their sheikh. So for 3 days they left the fish there and it had gone bad, it had gone off. So it was on the 4th day when it had gone off, we had to eat it like that. You understand? So this struggle will carry on. There's a famous comparative between two really important scholars of their time. There's a scholar called Ibn Hazm, you must have heard of. Ibn Hazm was a great scholar of his time from Andalus. And his contemporary was a scholar called Abu Walid al-Baji. So anyone from Maliki fiqh over here, they'll know the name Abu Walid al-Baji. So Abu Walid al-Baji and Ibn Hazm had a debate in which Abu Walid al-Baji won. But after the debate, Ibn Hazm, who was the Qadi of Majorca now, it's a place called Majorca, right? He left Majorca and went to Andalus. But it was at the end of this munadhara, or this debate, that Abu Walid al-Baji said to Imam Ibn Hazm that you'll have to forgive me. I apologize for the knowledge that I have learnt. I have learnt from the lanterns of gates, or what we could call lampposts. Abu Walid al-Baji was a poor person, and he was so poor that he took on a job of looking after the gates of the city. So in those days, all the gates, all cities were actually quite well guarded. So what he used to do is he used to be a gate person. So the gate on the top, it has a lantern. He used to use that lantern and read there. That's the only time he used to find time to read, and he used to use the light to read on. Later on, they say that after he moved into Andalus, he got a job looking after the gates of a nice business where they used to weave gold. Gold and silver, you put it into threads. That was the job. So scholars, they say that at night he used to have a nice light there, and they could see the signs of hard work on his hands, because he used to also use the hammer. So they could see that he's had a hard day's work, and then he used to teach with the light. So he said to Ibn Hazm, what did he say? That you'll have to excuse me because most of the reading that I've done it using what? The lights of the lanterns. And Ibn Hazm said to him, you'll have to excuse me as well, because all the reading I've done it using candles made of gold and silver. Because Ibn Hazm was a rich person. He had a lot of money, he was the son of a governor, and he had a position or a post in government as well. So you can see the contrast of two scholars over here. One who is so poor that he's having to use the public lights, sitting on the lamppost and reading, and the other one, he's so rich that he's using lanterns made of gold and silver. And the contrast between the two. What I'm saying is that the pursuit of scholarship will carry on. It's a divine ordinance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The question is, where do you see yourself in it? Where do you see yourself in it? And like I said, if you find that all this that I've talked about from the Sahaba onwards is it's obsolete, it's too dark in the past, I'll tell you some examples of my friends that I know of personally that may provide some inspiration. When I was at Darul Uloom, one of my best friends is from Thailand, and he left after he just married. Okay, so it was his 4th month. He'd married, it was in his 4th month, and he left Thailand to come to India. He went back after 6 years, and his wife had a kid as well. Okay, what did he do? Think about this. He got married, it was 4 months, he left to go to India. He spent 6-7 years there, and then he went back. And in the meantime, his wife had a kid, and she used to work as well. I had another friend called Adil, who had left his house at the age of 7. He's from a place called Tibet. I'm sure most of you will have a place called Tibet. Okay, and Tibet obviously has gone through many changes, hasn't it, over the past. The Chinese have taken over and things, right? He left his house at the age of 7. His mum kicked him out of the house, according to what he told me. Tibet is an interesting place. His family is responsible for converting one of the emperors there. So it's a long family that has a history. And he said that for many years, or for many generations, there's been no ulama in my family. So my mum had the urge to make me an alim, so she threw me out of the house saying, go study. So he studied for 14 years. Okay, as a 7-year-old boy, he went to Nepal first. He did his hifz there. Then he came to India. He studied in Lucknow with us. He did his alim class. Then he did his iftar. After 14 years, he went back home. Okay, as a grown-up man, as a 24, 5-year-old. And he came back and he was just telling me all the stories, like how everything's changed. He goes, nobody even speaks Tibetan anymore, because the Chinese have taken over. So he goes, everyone speaks Chinese. He goes, I go to my local shop, all the signs, everything is in Chinese. Right? He says, I went to my local shop and I had difficulty trying to ask for a bar of soap. And then he told me a joke that he had to give a khutbah in the mosque. So he got so angry, he started giving the khutbah in Urdu. Okay? No, alhamdulillah, so when you see these people in front of you, yeah, one of my teachers, he was telling us about how Sheikh Zakir actually mentions this in his book, that once he was in the mosque and somebody stole his slippers. Well, his slippers got misplaced. He goes, for 6 months I didn't leave the mosque. Yeah, because he said, I didn't need to the mosque because all the teaching and learning was in the mosque. For 6 months I didn't bother going out. Okay? When a person finds himself in that situation, then you have to ask yourself, why do they do all this? Why do you put yourself through all of this? Okay? So the next time you see, the point I want to make is, many times we see students of knowledge who see certain individuals that have gained some sort of fame. Okay, so you think, oh, look at this scholar, mashallah, he feels so good, look, mashallah, he has so much money, he's so prosperous, he's so nice, I want to be like that. But you don't realize the amount of effort that has gone in behind that. Okay? When you see scholars, you have to realize that their struggle and how they've become the people that they've become. You understand? When I used to see my teachers and the way they used to treat me, and I used to hear about their struggles, it would truly humble a person. And I know that the only reason why I'm sharing this is because you can understand what it means to be a student of knowledge. Okay? What it means to be a student of knowledge. We had certain teachers, even in the past and today, who would say things like, oh, don't wear white clothes. What? Don't wear white clothes. Why? Because they're so poor that their clothes would get dirty and they couldn't wash them. So what do? You don't wear white clothes. You just carry on like that. You know, there's a famous tabi'i called Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, you read about him. They say that Shu'bah used to deliberately wear clothes that used to be the color of the turab, of the earth. Why? So it wouldn't bother him if his clothes are dirty or clean. He'd just carry on teaching. You understand? So, what am I saying? That if you really want to study, then you have to understand your worth. What it means to be a student. What you want to do with the ilm. Where you'll go with it. And the consequences that are involved. Previously there were two ways or two methods of learning knowledge. Okay? The first one is what you guys are doing now. It's called institutionalized learning. Where you go to an institute, you study for 5 or 6 years or how many years they are. And the second method of learning is what we call dukhul ala shuyukh, where you go to certain teachers and you sit with them and you learn with them, which is also another classical method of learning. So you go to a sheikh and ask him, Sheikh, can you give me time? I learn this, like that. Okay? So what the teachers and the scholars have said is that the best method of going around learning knowledge is to actually go through an institutionalized learning first, and then what? And then go on to sitting with the shuyukh. What happens with sitting with the shuyukh is, a lot of the times you don't know what your weaknesses or your strengths are. So there's too many gaps left in a person's scholarship. Does that make sense? So in order to get a truly well-rounded, scholar, it's best if you stay with the institution first, and then move on to sitting with other shuyukh. Imam al-Shatibi in the Muwafaqat says that all the fada'il of ilm, so you will have heard many fada'il, that even the angels, what do? They spread out their wings for those who are students. Say that the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea make dua for the talibul ilm. The Prophet ﷺ said that man salaka, that whoever pursues or takes the path of learning knowledge and struggles, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his entrance or his path into Jannah easy. Right? All these ahadith, according to Imam Shatibi, are contingent on amal. What does that mean? I'll tell you what that means. That the primary reason for learning is not that you learn for the sake of learning. Okay? Modern scholarship tends to focus on this. That when we go to an education institute, we learn. We learn to do what? To get a job. Is that it? So even what we're saying is that under a capitalist system, the very pursuit of knowledge then becomes what? A capitalist enterprise. Okay, it's about marketization of knowledge. It doesn't work. What you do is just have loads of people with degrees and that's it. Okay? So, what was I saying? I was saying that Imam al-Shatibi says that all the fada'il of ilm, all the virtues of knowledge are contingent on a person practicing. Right? Why do we seek ilm? We seek ilm to practice the ilm. Does that make sense? When we look at this in the light of the Sahaba, I can tell you for now that most of the Sahaba will not have had the access to the knowledge that we have now. Okay? How many Sahaba do you think have memorized the entire Quran? How many Sahaba had a Quran at their disposal? You know, even when we look at the Huffaz, the key Sahaba whom the Prophet ﷺ had told us to refer to. Take the example of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, famous Qari of the time. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari's Quran, they say, was a sack full of bones and rocks. Imagine a big sack full of bones and rocks. That's his Quran, so he's going to dig out for a verse. Right? They never had a nice, decorated Quran that we see in front of us right now. Paper was expensive then, and paper had only come around the 2nd or 3rd century. Okay, so you can imagine the Sahaba themselves and the depository, if I can use that word, the depository that they had of knowledge. Yet, they were better than us. Yet the Sahaba was better than us. Secondly, when we look at the way the Sahabas learnt, we realize that almost all of the learning they did was only for the objective of practicing. Of practice. So when we look at the Sahaba and how they did hifd, for example, hifd when they memorized the Quran, we have narrations from many senior tabi'een who said that the method in which the Sahaba went in learning the Quran was that they would take 5 verses, 5 to 10 verses, they would sit with them, they would read them, they would learn them, they would memorize them, they would internalize them, they would practice them, and then move on. And it's because of this that we find narrations like Ibn Umar saying he spent 20 years on learning Surah Al-Baqarah. Because he had ensured that everything he'd learned, he'd understood properly, he'd internalized and practiced, and then he moved on. Do you understand? So, the point I'm saying is that the learning of the Sahaba was pretty much for that reason. It was for the sake of practicing. We have examples of this in this century. I know of individuals who had come once in a famous person's khanqah. He'd said that I've come to learn Kitab al-Zakah. So he learned Kitab al-Zakah, and then he was going to the Shaykh to him, don't you want to learn anymore? He goes, no, I don't need any more. Okay, this is all I wanted. I know how to practice my religion. I need to move on now. So what can't happen or shouldn't happen is that the pursuit of knowledge or the gaining of information in and of itself becomes what? The objective. If that's the case, then this is what we call a case of philosophizing. Right? Philosophizing knowledge, where everything becomes armchair talk. I think that's the term I'll use. Armchair talk. You know, people talk about Islam all the time, you know, in the media, or are you an extremist, are you fundamentalist, you know, what about like different articulations of religion, how this works. All of that is good when what? You've prayed your Fajr Salah. Hassan al-Banna used to often say, you know, the founder of Ikhwan, he used to have people come and giving long, eloquent talks about tajdeed. Tajdeed meaning what? The renewal of Islam, about reform and everything. And he used to ask this one question: have you prayed Fajr? And they'd be like, no. He goes, go pray Fajr first. Okay? Prioritize, people. Prioritize. Prioritize, and it's with the prioritization, with sincerity, with a sense of direction, that you will succeed. In the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, we find that they get to a stage where what happens? لَقَدْ لَقِينَا مَنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا. Nasab means weariness. You feel tired. You feel worn out. The scholars say that this experience or this phenomena of feeling worn out only happened because Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had deviated. Okay? He'd left the original purpose. Because they went to meet Khidr, didn't they? And the story says that they had a certain type of fish that would go in the water, and that would tell them where he is. Right? The fish had gone in the water. The Fatah or his assistant had forgotten, hadn't he? So they'd moved on. And it's only after they'd moved on that Musa then felt hungry. And it's only then that Musa felt, you know, this is one tiresome journey. What's happening? He said to him, no, the fish went there. He goes, let's go back then. So he said, because he had digressed from the original path, from the primary reason why he had started the journey in the first place, that's why he felt tired. That's why he felt worn out. That's a sign. It's a sign, we say, of anyone who's studying knowledge. When he feels like that, that might be an indication that what he's studying is not in his best interests. You understand? Okay, when you feel like that, then you need to ask yourself, why is it that you're studying? Constantly ask yourself, why is it that you're studying? What's the purpose of me studying? What is it that I want to do with this ilm? Okay? Because with every privilege comes its opposite as well. Okay? The hadith says, Al-Qur'anu hujjatan laka aw alayk. The Qur'an will be what? Either evidence or witness for you or against you. There's no middle ground about this. So every ilm that you learned, you'll be asked about. What will you be asked about? Why did you learn it? What did you do with it? Why did you learn it? What did you do with it? And obviously there are hadith on the opposite side as well. Apart from the fada'il, we have what? The opposite. The example I gave you was from the story from the parable or the example that the Quran gave of what? The donkey. Other examples in hadith, that anybody who studies ilm to fight, to debate, to say that I'm a big scholar, for all of these people is a severe warning. Okay? For those who want to debate among scholars and debate against the juhal or against the awam, against the public, and the hadith says that this person will not even feel or smell the fragrance of Jannah, and the fragrance of Jannah can be felt from just thousands and thousands of years of distance away. Okay? And for those who study knowledge for the sake that they can be called knowledgeable, famous hadith in Muslim, as far as I remember, is that this person will be brought on the day of Qiyamah, he'll be asked, why did you study knowledge? And he'll say, I studied knowledge for your sake, and Allah will say, you're lying. You only studied it because people would say that you're an alim. Now that it has been said in the dunya that you're an alim, then go into hellfire. And they say they'll throw him in head first, straight down into hellfire. Okay? So this sort of knowledge is what? it's against us. It's against all of us. And therefore, one of the key things that I will say to my fellow students is we need to be asking ourselves, why is it that we're learning? Okay, please understand the gravity of ilm. Yeah. Understand the gravity of ilm. Understand why we're learning ilm. Understand its purpose. And then inshallah see if this is for you. If it is, then please carry on in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide. This is a guarantee. This is a guarantee. One thing I've seen with all the students that I know of, who've all had their stories of struggle, none of them has what? None of them has died of hunger, so to speak. Okay? None of them has died of hunger, so to speak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala feeds everyone. Okay? Yes, there's certain struggles that are to be had, but those struggles come with a price, and the price is ultimately Jannah. Okay? What's the question?
You mentioned a good point about prioritizing, especially in our time where people's lives are somewhat different. I think one of the things that, if you can highlight, is that the times that we're living in today, I know there's certain factors are similar, but there's certain factors that are not similar, which could hamper someone's progress, i.e., the way life is in this time, and prioritizing. Could you just touch on those 2 points?
Right, prioritization based on what certain demands and the context that we find ourselves in. Right. How do you prioritize? It's very easy. The scholars say that knowledge is based on 2 things: the fard, those that are absolutely necessary; those that are wajib; those that are fard ayn; those that are fard kifai. Right. Fard ayn is what? It's obligatory upon every person to know how to pray, how to fast. Right? And it's in this context that the hadith comes, talabul ilm farid ala kulli muslim. Yeah? That learning knowledge is an obligation upon every individual Muslim. To the extent that he can practice him to be a proper Muslim. Right? Then what comes after that is what we call the ones that are next in line and next in line, next in line. So it's based on this that you should be prioritizing your studies. Okay? In terms of what he was saying is that how do we find ourselves? It's absolutely true. I completely agree with you. But it's a matter of trying to work how best to pursue the knowledge in the situation that we find ourselves in. Okay, and if you are sincere, then obviously, yes, there are struggles to be had. But if we fight them, we'll get places. Okay? Take the example of Abu Yusuf, rahmatullah alayhi, who's a student of Abu Hanifa. Okay? Abu Yusuf was from a poor family. And he used to work in a weaver's shop, and then used to sit in Abu Hanifa's halaqat, fiqh halaqas. And his father used to scold him, saying, why are you going to his halaqah for? Look, he has, they say, khubzun mashwi. He has grilled food, he has grilled, bread at home. We can't even afford that. As in, he's a rich person, he can sit there, he has a privilege to do that. We have no money, you have to bring money in the house. Okay? So Abu Yusuf used to go in class, and his father used to come and take him away, saying, come, you have to go, you don't sit here, we have to work like this. So Abu Hanifa found out eventually that this is the situation. So Abu Hanifa, what he started doing, he started giving him money. He said to him, look, come sit and study. So we're saying is where there's a will, there's a way. And in the end, obviously, we know Abu Yusuf became what? His heir, his successor. He became the great judge of it all. So that's what happens, that what we see is, with the more the struggle, the better the person's ilm becomes. Yeah? Wallahi, I've seen this myself, that it's the same text that all of us will read. Okay? But it's the experience and the struggle with which a person reads that brings out the nur in it. Okay? Otherwise, we all read the same books. All of us are reading the same Quran that the Sahabas heard and read. Right? Yet there's something in our reading that we don't have that they had. I need to ask yourselves what that was. And personally, I think it was this. It was the sincerity, it was the gravity with which they read it, that we fail to appreciate today. Otherwise, everything's there, nothing's changed. The books are still there, alhamdulillah. But it's the question of, what is it that they had that we don't have? Okay? And try to better ourselves from there, inshallah. Okay? Right, bismillah, subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanallah, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.